I don't remember it. They came real fast, and we were living with my grandparents. My grandfather had gone back down to Georgia where he was born for what they call Old Home Week in August. They always have it the last week of August. And he took my aunt with him, my mother's older sister. Her baby started coming prematurely, and she couldn't get to the hospital in time. So she called the white ambulance. She called the ambulance, the black ambulance, because blacks were not allowed to use the white ambulances, and the black ambulance was otherwise occupied. The doctor came and he was in attendance. They told me, all of them are dead now, that I got to hold the first baby. I have no recollection, and believe me, I spent a lifetime trying to remember holding that baby, because babies are my main weakness. And she lost both of them. Now, I knew she lost them, because even though 6 of us survived, she talked about them all the time. But she even had named them. And if you know anything about Black culture, you do not name babies that early. But their names were Wayne and Dane. I'm interviewing my auntie, my mother's sister, in 2000. My mother died in 75. She never told me the complete story. So I said, Aunt Pat, could you tell me some of the segregated things in our hometown, Middletown, Ohio, between Cincinnati and Dayton, about 30 miles from the Ohio River. And she started going through this list of things. And then she said, the white ambulance wouldn't take your mama to the hospital, and that's why she lost her twins. I said, what are you talking about? Because I knew before I even asked her that the cemetery was segregated. I knew before I even asked her that you couldn't move across the railroad tracks. I knew we got the discarded books of the white middle school when I was going to middle school. And because I saw names of some athletes that were 8 years older than me in the books that I had gotten. But I didn't know anything about the cemetery. I mean, about the ambulances. And she said, even if she had gotten there, all of the blacks had to be in the basement. Now, we're not talking about Mississippi. And she said that when your mother got up, was able to walk after she'd lost the babies, she walked over to the cemetery and she knocked on the door of the office of the cemetery, and she asked where were her babies. And they told her they did not know. The next year, maybe that year, I went to the cemetery looking for my brothers. And I had a good pair of sneakers. And it was raining. And I ruined those sneakers walking all over that cemetery, trying to find those babies. I also couldn't find Mom's grave. One of my aunties helped me find Mom's grave, but I didn't find the babies. So one of my brothers, and I had knocked on the door. It was on a Saturday. I was living in New Jersey at the time. I knocked on the door of the office of the cemetery, and a gentleman came, and I said, I'm looking for my brothers. And he said, well, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm just doing a little extra work. I don't work on Saturdays. And he just closed the door in my face. I think it was 2015, 16. One of my brothers went back to the same cemetery, knocked on the door, and the woman who was there said, we have everything on a database. I'll see what I can find. And she found where my brothers were born, were buried. They were only numbers, even though she had named them. And that Memorial Day, I didn't, as some of you know, I'm a minister. I've been a minister since before I turned 18. So I'm over 54 years now. We had a ceremony for them on Memorial Day. And I contacted the newspaper. They put a story about it on the front page. And we gave them a proper memorial service. We went back over to where Mom's grave was, since it had been found. And we remembered Mom. And my wife touched me on the shoulder and she said, "Look up." And I looked up and there was a hawk that was circling. And I continued speaking and she touched me again. And that hawk was feeding 2 babies in the nest. If it would have been in a movie, you'd have said, "This is corny. There is just no way." Well, I've had 20 years now to think about my aunt telling me the story that Mom hadn't told me. And I believe that the reason Mom never told us was she did not want us to be bitter and hate all white people. I believe that was the reason she didn't tell us. I'm gonna let it sit right there. And if anyone has any questions or statements, I will let her or him speak.
Dwight,
Yes.
you could have taken that as an opportunity to hate yourself, to hate other people because of what happened to your family. I don't perceive you as a hateful person. Why not?
It was far too late for me to see it, to inhale that hatred, because it's too many white people that have been good and important in my life. I mean, I've had mentors who were black and white, straight and gay. I pastored Durham Friends Meeting in Maine, changed my whole life. I can't remember when in my top 10 friends, there were not at least 2 or 3, maybe 4 or 5 whites. It was way too late for me to feel that way. Plus, to me, if you know that you've been stereotyped and oppressed because of it, why would you do it to somebody else? And I think that was probably part of my mother's energy too. Because everybody knows what right and wrong is. And if you grow up, well, I believe they do. If you grow up in a ghetto, the longest word that anybody knows is hypocrite. That's the longest word. I mean, you may never have seen a school, but you know that word. So do you want to be as hypocritical as white America has been toward us? I'm not buying into that. It makes no sense. One piece of humorous, I think, irony to my mother was she only lived long enough to see one of my 4 sons. And so I'm in Maine pastoring Durham Friends Meeting, and she's back in Ohio, and I'm talking to her on the phone. I said, "Mom, I'm going to give my child an African name." And she says, "Why would you give a child a name that nobody can pronounce?" I said, Mama, what makes you think no one will be able to pronounce the baby's name? Well, my firstborn son's name is Kai. If you can say Sky, you can say Kai. And I said, you don't even know what my name means, do you? And she said, well, no. And I said, you chose it because you like the way it sounded, right? And she said, well, yes. And I said, you named me Dwight Lamont, which means white lawyer. Why would a black mama name her child white lawyer? In most world history, whenever you gave a child a name, you gave the child a name with meaning. But in the last 100 or so years in America, we just pick something out of the sky. It's crazy. Well, my wife, Diane, is a white lawyer. And so was my mother being a prophet when she said that? I don't know.
I appreciate your sharing with us. I'm really thirsty for the kind of perspectives that we can share so that we can establish better connections. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I suppose this is where I bow out.
We'll go into regular worship right now, but I hate to see you go. I'd like to spend a few more hours with you.
Well, that's very kind of you. Our meeting is going to start in a half an hour, and I need to visit the necessary room in between. So may the peace of God be with all of you.
And with you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dwight.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.